Hi, this is Billy Morissette from Dillinger 4, and you are listening to Trapped in a World, the only podcast brave enough to talk about Howard the Duck.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trapped in a World, the Howard the Duck podcast. Trying to get myself psyched up with some energy. My name is Noel, and I'm a host, and this is my friend Russell, and he's a host. Say hi.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's pretty energetic there.
I'm on coffee number 3. We gotta be excited.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. Whoa. We've got to cover a bunch of stuff today, so I didn't want to fuck around much. I'm trying to talk really fast in a very East Coast kind of way, even though I'm from the boring old flyover country of the Midwest. But today, we got a lot to cover. Like I said, we're going to cover Howard the Duck, Volume 1, Issue 7 and 8. And between that, we will have a very special guest join us, Charle Esser, to do Marvel Treasury Edition number 12, I believe. Yes, number 12, with Howard Meets the Defenders. So, that being said, let's kind of jump right into stuff. Like I said, we're going to summarize those 3 issues for you, and then we're going to have, talk about them, do all that stuff. Talk about a little other crap that goes with that stuff, whatever comes to our mind, because, this is a podcast about comic books, and who gives a shit?
Mm-hmm.
And if you guys would like to send in feedback for future episodes coming up, number 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, the Chip Zdarsky run, whatever you feel like doing. Howard the Mouse, if you want to send us feedback.
You won't hear it for a while.
Yeah.
But
It'll be a time capsule. It'll be great. You can send us an email or voice memo to howardpodcast@gmail.com. And now we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/trappedinaworld. Trapped in a world, trapped in a world, trapped in a world. And you can sign up for either $3 or $6 a month and help us keep the lights on and the hosting and all that stuff. Because it's, if you'd like to hear more episodes, give us money. That's how, basically.
you got the money, gimme.
Yeah. We would probably do it anyway, but It just kind of helps the old pocketbook. So let's get into it. Howard the Duck, Volume 1, Number 7, The Way the Cookie Crumbles. The cover art was by Gene Colan. I've got all these things mixed up, so I'm just going to read them out of order. Cover art by Gene Colan. Release date, September 28th, 1976. Cover date, December 76, a.k.a. the day they rip off the covers. Mm-hmm. Writer, Steve Gerber. Penciler, Gene Colan. Inker, Steve Laiola. Colorist, Marie Severin. Letterer, Jim Novak. And the editor was famous Archie Goodwin. Here we go.
Last time on Howard the Duck. Howard and Beverly are on their way to New York from Cleveland, and they come across Patsy and her insane mother in their manor in the Poconos, where Patsy had created, or baked, a gingerbread monster. Chapter 1. Sounds like I'm doing an audiobook.
That's the point.
Patsy's gingerbread man has sprung to life and starts lurching towards all gathered. Beverly and Howard make a break for it. However, Howard decides to turn and fight and begins attacking the gingerbread man, eating the monster's leg off. Short a leg, the gingerbread man stumbles across backwards into a machine, causing a chain reaction. Howard and Beverly manage to make it out of the house just before it explodes, apparently killing everyone else inside. Beverly has some remorse, especially for poor Patsy, but Howard was convinced she was just a 37-year-old little person who'd escaped from some penitentiary death row. Plus, the cookie tasted horrible. Howard and Beverly then resume their hitchhiking to New York. Chapter 2. Sometime later, Howard and Beverly are picked up by the country western star Dreyfus Gulch, who is in New York to sing the national anthem during the all-night parties national convention. Howard and Beverly ask Dreyfus if he can help them get jobs in New York, and Dreyfus, leering at Beverly,
Oh boy, does he.
agrees to try and help them out. The two get jobs for the convention, Beverly as a hospitality girl and Howard as a security guard. That night, as they receive their uniforms from a hotel employee that Bev doesn't know how to tip, they get the first in a series of cryptic notes giving a part of a recipe. During the convention, Howard takes note of the very lax security. The chief of security is more busy messing around with the hospitality girls than to give Howard directions, and is dragged into the all-night party bosses discussing intelligence. Howard dispenses his straightforward advice on political matters such as the powers the CIA should have and which candidate to follow. Wall drop or wall drap? Beverly and Howard meet up after work to tell each other about their day. Howard complaining about party bosses and Beverly about her overpinched bottom. Both exhausted, they return to the room to rest, finding another cryptic message in the form of a recipe. That night, Howard goes out with some of the party members and Dreyfus to a strip club where Howard gets yet another cryptic message. Realizing that it's a recipe for baked Alaska, Howard figures that there is a bomb in the building. Rushing to the convention speech being made by Waldrop, Howard spies the standard for Alaska is starting to smoke. Pulling it free, Howard pulls it into a 7-layer cake, which muffles the blast. After the explosion, the cake-covered Waldrop, finding the post as party leader too dangerous, he quits. Shortly after, all present call Howard a hero and nominate him to be their candidate.
Yes, indeed. So this is the start of even though we've got the gingerbread monster on the cover, this is the start of the very famous Howard the Duck fake run for president that made it into media, actually, because somebody had claimed that Howard had gotten a bunch of votes for president in real life as a write-in candidate, but I can't remember the exact number. I think they said something like he had gotten 2% or something crazy like that, which is someone did a sort of a Mythbusters on that. And there's no way that could have possibly happened. But as a newcomer to Howard the Duck, which sometimes I forget to say on this, we're doing this whole podcast because Russ had never read Howard the Duck, and I had read a lot of Howard the Duck. So what did you think of this Howard the Duck comic?
While I was disappointed that we kind of really breezed past all the setup from the last issue, I think that was kind of the point. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the last issue was probably just a filler, or Gerber just halfway through the last issue was like, I should make Howard run for president. And while I was a little disappointed they wrapped that up so quickly, it's done very, very well with Howard just eating his leg.
How else would you kill a gingerbread man?
Right. I love Dreyfus Gulch, how his accent is so eloquently lettered. Yeah. Because it's just hilarious. Yeah, it was a fun issue. We really starting to get into that political satire here, and I actually really enjoy. Howard's basically saying that both parties are complete idiots, and stumbles into being a party member himself.
They hook him. He's spying on them, and they just he's starting to make a few smart ass kind of comments, and they just grab him. He's like, "Yeah, wait a second, get in here, Duck. What do you got to say?"
I also really like that they saw that sign that said Reverend Yuck's Bicentennial Prayer Meeting and Korean Karate Exhibition next week, and Howard's like, "Well, I think they'll have to call that one off."
Yeah, the good Reverend was blown up back at the manor with the rest of the townsfolk or the real estate agent.
Yeah.
And he was basically a life coach, a life consultant.
Yeah. So yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed the satire, and there was some pretty funny moments in it. And I just love how Howard is just like not taking any shit.
Yeah, classic Howard. Immediately doesn't take any shit, and he's like, "You guys are all idiots." I wonder if people are as stupid as hairless apes are back in his world. And he's just upset about everybody all the time.
Yeah.
I believe he is, actually. Yeah, the panel, the artwork is fantastic. It's really, once again, he's stepped it up. The one panel where they're in Gulch's limousine headed toward the thing, and Bev is talking about if there's any jobs, at the convention that they're headed to, and that they're broke and they need to get an apartment. He's like, well, ordinarily, I don't like to use my powerful influence that way, but I suppose I could make an exception for such an exceptional pair as you. And he's just staring right at her boobs.
Yeah.
And Beverly's kind of looking down at her boobs. And he's like, hey, Howie, maybe we can catch a job as the main course at the banquet. What you think? And Howard just thinks, his thought bubble is, kill. That is so fun. That seems really like modern to me in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you think? You can be the main course. Hey, you duck. Kill. But all the Howard stuff, art-wise, looks really, it is so cute.
Yeah.
Once again, the contrast. And I'm beginning to like Beverly more and more with every issue. I wonder if Mary Skrenas had a little bit to do with her characterization in this one as well. I don't know, but it kind of seems like it. It's like she kind of goes back and forth between sort of a stereotypical sort of 70s kind of sexist look at women, like a weird jump between sort of that and then all of a sudden having a lot to do and actually coming off really smart and being like a fully fleshed out kind of character. And the fact that between Howard's crankiness and her sort of earnestness, everybody else in the comic is just a total asshole.
Yeah.
It's so funny. The party bosses are so funny to me. They're just their arguments about intelligence, whether the CIA should have a role in foreign stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
Their arguments back and forth are really funny about that. And they're actually bringing up sort of real life things that were happening at the time.
Any of you turkeys know anything about intelligence? Well, not firsthand, but
yeah. The one guy is the CIA must learn moderation, of course. Our men in Mufti deserve our support, but we cannot condone assassination except in self-defense. Which is, that's the 70s. That's the height of the CIA going into other countries, basically just killing leaders and posting up puppets to run these countries. So it's just funny that Gerber is right in there. That's right at the time that is happening. And it's actually not that sort of, it's known, but it's not as widely known as it is now that the CIA was up to such evil. And it's just funny that even within the all-night party, there's such a digression between beliefs and what the party should be. So it's almost like they're an allegory for the two parties to begin with. It's really funny. And then they're the fact that the two candidates are the exact same. So,
yeah.
Instead of picking between lesser evils, it's picking between one vowel and a name.
Yeah.
I find that hilarious. But where would you put this sort of on your scale of Howard comics so far? I'm sure it's still nothing can beat the Hell Cow for you, but as far as Volume 1 goes,
I like it. I like it quite a bit. I think I'd rate it higher than the last one, because the last one ended up really just being a nothing story.
Yeah, it's sort of a 1 and a 1/10 and done story.
I'm thinking back on our previous issues here. I don't know. It's pretty high up there on the ranking, just because I think it's really smart, but also funny. We've been saying that, sometimes Gerber would write one for him for satire, and then he'd write one for goofiness. Well, this one feels like both. Yeah,
I feel like he's starting to kind of get his groove a little bit to combine the two sort of, I don't know, not genres, but whatever you'd want to call that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It does. I didn't really think of that. That's a good point. It is a very smart, goofy comic.
Yes. I mean, the Waldrop joke is both goofy and intelligent at the same time, because, like, sometimes you'll have political candidates that are like, these two are just the same, you know? But
well, a lot of people who don't really follow politics, which is most people, always say that. Like, oh, there's no difference between the two parties. They're all the same. And then people like me who follow politics pretty closely are like, are you kidding me?
Right.
The difference between these two is night and day.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little bit of the commentary. It's like they are kind of the same in the grand scheme of things, the way the public sort of looks at it. But if you get down to the minutia, they actually are. People can be quite different.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny, though, about all the cliches that he sort of brings that the political party would have. Like they go to a strip club.
Yeah.
And Howard's just like, okay, I guess I'm going to a strip club. Some distraction.
The next issue has a lot more like laugh out loud, stereotypical political stuff that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, let's move on. We don't have any feedback today because no one sent any in. But also, not just kidding. We've got one piece of feedback here from our friend Ray, and then we'll be right back with Charle Esser to talk about The Duck and the Defenders.
Hello, Noel, and hello, Russell. This is Ray, also known as host from Into the Dark Knight, all to do with Batman, my favourite character. Anyway, that aside, just wanted to leave some thoughts for issue 7 of Howard the Duck. A follow-on from issue 6, of course, left on a cliffhanger with the giant Frankenstein cookie monster. So that kind of wrapped up. That little girl actually reminded me of, I'm not sure if you guys came across it in your news, it was a while ago, but this American couple adopted a little girl, a 10-year-old girl, and she turned out to be a 21-year-old Ukrainian psychopath who tried to kill them. I kid you not. She tried to poison their coffee. She kind of stood over them with sharp objects in the middle of the night. Pretty freaky stuff. Anyway, the little girl reminded me of that. Aside from that little story, really funny cookie Frankenstein. I kind of, guessed where it was heading. I mean, if I saw a huge cookie monster, I'd be friggin' tucking in the napkin and the serviette and getting the fork and the knife and hoeing in. So I can understand where Howard comes from there. As for the main story, Glutch, I think he was, that kind of politician for the all-night party. I thought that was hilarious. I did not expect having Howard in the, what do you Americans call it? In the Boys in Blue? I don't know, as a policeman, as a security officer, figure of authority. That was quite fun to see. Bev, of course, kind of coveted by this guy. So, she gets her outfit for the whole kind of party. But yeah, overall, I thought, it was good. I enjoyed the previous issue a little bit more, but this had a lot of the tried and true Howardisms, I guess, of him making quick retorts, being a little bit cranky as always, and just overall a sense of again a little bit of a poke at society, but done in a very satirical, funny manner. So anyway, issue 7 was really cool. Look, I'm not going to rate it as well. As you said, Noel, how could you rate perfection? But I'm looking forward to reading more Howard the Duck as it unfolds. I'm loving your podcast. Keep it up, guys. You're doing so well. It sounds really cool. I love the points you pick out, and I love the bits that you love as well. So it's a really fun journey to go on. Anyway, I'll catch you later. Hi, this is Ray Zod from The Last Sons of Krypton, a Superman podcast. You're listening to Trapped in a World, the Howard the Duck podcast, and it is about the greatest alien in the universe. Enjoy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a couple of old guys talking about comic books. I'm here with my friend Charlie, the Professor Esser. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just fine. Always glad to be here. And, well, for the first time, I'm glad to be here. But I'm sure I will always be glad to be here if you ever invite me back again.
Oh, and we will. Russell had to run upstairs and do some yoga with my wife or something.
Okay.
But he recorded a synopsis of the issue we're about to talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to ask you, since this is your first time on, and maybe there's a few people who don't know who you are, but your name is...
I'm Charlie.
Your name is Charlie
Esser from New Jersey. You can look me up. I'm in the book. Call me if you need money. Always very generous. And let's see here. I, of course, started back in the days of the Southgate Media Group with Nuff Said. And then I started Super Connectivity, which then got rolled into the Capes Lunatics group, and I am one of the official Capes and Lunatics with Phil and Lilith over there, and of course I do Full Stream Ahead with the fantastic Maz, skinny rich friend Manzor.
Well, so I wanted to have you on because I know that you're a big fan of Howard the Duck.
Oh, huge fan of Howard ever since the movie.
Is that when when your Howard fandom started?
I mean, really, I would say that's when. I mean, I was a younger man, and comics. It was harder to get to comics back in the day, but that was probably the first big introduction to Howard. I had been reading Marvel comics, but not Howard the Duck at the time, so I didn't know of him. And he wasn't in Secret Wars. He didn't have the crossover to the comics I was reading as much. And then, we got the big, bold thing, Howard the Duck coming to theaters near you. And then,
Right.
Then
and
it was all over.
They did a comic book version of the movie that was pretty... I don't own it yet. I've got it on a list that I'm about to buy. I don't think... Howard, by that time, whenever that movie was, 85? 4? Around the Secret Wars time. Howard had been out of comics for a while anyway, so it would have been hard to. I was lucky enough that there was a comic shop within just a couple blocks of my house that had a lot of back issues of stuff from the 70s, so I was able to pick up the random Howard book just there because they were... Nobody, by the time that movie came out, the price of Howard comics kind of tanked. Yeah. So they were
I can't imagine why. Like I said, I enjoy the movie. I think it's a good take on him. Steve Gerber actually did consult on the film. And, George Lucas did it because he loved Howard, There was a lot of love for Howard in that, I think it captured a lot, and it told its story in a much more grounded way, in the way that really I think a lot of modern superhero films try to be, where they have it, because there is this whole thing about Quack Fu in it, and they actually show that he actually has trophies for his black belt in Quack Fu that he had earned on Duck World, so that it's all connected to the larger story. They actually, build out this backstory that I don't know you ever really get in the original Howard the Duck narrative, but it's like because we got to ground Howard the Duck, which is. You can say that's a good idea or a bad idea. I enjoy it, and I think that's something that you get with that. But
I think his first appearance wasn't very grounded at all in comics, so maybe they felt it was. I know the creators, besides Lucas, didn't understand at all what Howard was. They said, like how abstract and existential can you make this when it's a space alien that looks like a duck or whatever? And that was Steve Gerber's almost exact opposite take on the character itself. Yeah,
well, it is what it is. Like I said, it's, I think that the character exists in, that's the thing with any character. And I know that there's all this stuff about, who created ideas and things like that. But I do think that any character, and every character, and this goes for everything, they get into the zeitgeist. They get into, even if they're not public domain in the legal sense, there is this sense that we all own them. Well, not own them, but we all have a right to our fanfic. So
that's true.
And I kind of feel that Howard the Duck was George Lucas's fanfic.
I don't know a lot about Lucas's history with Howard, other than he was obviously a fan. But I mean, there were Steve Gerber, Howard the Duck comic books making fun of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he was already reading Howard at that point and it gets to it and he's like, oh, they're making fun of my stuff. This is great. Well, or if someone said, hey, man, they're making fun of your stuff. You should maybe read this.
Well, I would imagine, here's what I'll say. I would imagine, because, he was a college kid. I think, Catalhart's kid at the time that it was coming out. So obviously, it would have been in the zeitgeist around him. So I wouldn't be surprised that he picked up early issues of Howard,
Oh, yeah.
And
it was popular. Marvel claimed that number one sold out so fast, and that it was like the most popular comic that they had. Of course, they didn't really have proof of that.
Well,
Some said there was a printing error and his debut issue actually was undersold, and then they just played that up like, oh, actually, wait a second.
Yeah.
If we limit the press on these comic books, they'll all of a sudden go up in popularity and value. Yeah. What do you know?
They keep on selling out. We can't keep them on the shelves. Well,
we only printed 1,000 of them.
Yeah. But that's how you do it. That's how you manufacture interest, is you make it rare.
Exactly.
And see, Howard teaches everything you need to know about marketing.
Exactly. And so does Steve Gerber. Have you also been a big fan of Steve Gerber's work in general?
I have liked a lot of the things he's worked on. He's worked on a lot of stuff. He actually worked on a lot of 80s cartoons.
I know. G.I. Joe and Transformers.
Exactly. So, and all things that I really loved, so.
Yeah. I just found out he wrote an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Would not surprise me,
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, he's a professional writer. And if you're a writer, you write, And that's the thing. It's like, and I'm sure he was happy to go, and just like Jack Kirby, he went and he drew. He did a lot of concept art for actually the animation studio that did Thundar the Barbarian. I think he also did a Thundar the Barbarian.
I think so.
I think a lot of the comic book guys, when they got sick of comic books, went out to Hollywood and just started writing TV shows and found a genre where they would be even less appreciated than comic books.
That's why most of them came back to comic books.
Yes, because at least they put your name in the comic book. At least people know you.
Let's get into this issue that we're going to talk about, the Duck and the Defenders.
Yes.
I'm going to read off the credits here, and then I'm going to play a little audio that Russ left for us, the synopsis of it before he went upstairs to do yoga. I think I hear a downward dog right now. Anyway, this was from the Marvel Treasury Edition, Volume 1, which I don't know if there was a second volume of the Treasury Edition or not, but that's the way I always put it. This was number 12, The Duck and the Defenders, and it has an original story by Gerber, and then the back matter is just filled with almost every appearance up until Howard the Duck number 1, I believe. So all the Man-Thing things. And the release date was October 5th, 1976. Cover date was 76. Cover artist was Gene Colan, but the penciler was Sal Buscema. Of course, written by Steve Gerber, and it was inked by Klaus Janson, which I think you can, when I read this again this morning, I was like, you can really tell there's some like thick-ass Klaus Janson inks going on in this comic. The colorist was the great Marie Severinsen. Letterer was Joe Rosen. Editor-in-chief was Jerry Conway. And now, a little vocal juice from Russell.
Prologue. 5 villains in search of a plot. A new group of supervillains called the Band of the Bland, Sitting Bullseye, Black Hole, Spanker, and Tilly the Hun, who all share one thing in common. Not a single one has had an original thought ever. They've gathered together in Central Park at midnight. The villains introduce themselves, their backstories, and superpowers, and get into a fight with some of New York's finest. After easily beating the police, Dr. Angst reveals himself, saying it was him who gathered the villains, and suggests that they should get a big money job to boost the villains' profiles. He suggests that they assassinate presidential candidate Howard the Duck. The next day, Howard and Beverly are kicked out of the hotel they'd been staying in for the all-night party convention. After insulting the hotel's manager, the pair start looking for old high school friends of Beverly's who are stewardess that live in Greenwich Village. After a quick run-in with Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson, which Peter recognizes them, they stumble upon Doctor Strange Sanctum Sanctorum. Greeted by Nighthawk and invited in by Doctor Strange, who is intrigued by Howard, they meet the Defenders, Nighthawk, Valkyrie, Doctor Strange, and the Incredible Hulk. Howard wants to leave, but is stopped by Doctor Strange because they have matters to discuss. Meanwhile, the new group of villains gather at Dr. Ank's secret lair, the Citadel of Mundane Magic, a dingy apartment above Feel-Good's Funhouse massage parlor. The Doctor shows the group magic Promethium Cherry Spheres that enhances the villains' powers, and they plan to attack Howard and the Defenders to seize more magic spheres and assassinate Howard. Back at the Sanctum Sanctorum, Doctor Strange is showing Howard around and having a walk and talk. Curious if Howard is responsible for elevated degree of mystical activity the sorcerer has been detecting, Howard denies it, but asks if Strange can send him back to his reality. Strange obliges. As he is about to cast the spell, a bunch of tennis balls come spewing out of the orb of Agamotto, knocking Strange unconscious. The rest of the Defenders rush upstairs to see what the problem is, but are stopped by a white picket fence that manifests out of nowhere. Suddenly, the whole group is attacked by the band of Banal, who believe themselves powered up on Promethium. Because Doctor Strange was struck down earlier, he appears to Howard in his astral form and transfers his mystical powers to Howard. Howard, with the help of Strange's voice in his head, and the Defenders then battle the band of the Banal. Howard casts a spell to remove the fight from the Sanctorum, and all but Strange, Dr. Angst, and Howard continue the battle at Shea Stadium. Dr. Angst appears and reveals to Howard his plan is to make money off assassinating him. The two battle, and after wrapping him in the cloak of levitation, Howard lands a punch to knock him out. Doctor Strange regains consciousness and reclaims his powers, bringing the group at Shea Stadium back. Doctor Strange then easily finishes off the group, explains to them that Promethium was just a placebo, and turns them over to the police. Howard asks Strange for bus fare back uptown.
And that is that.
Yeah, and that is a story, to say the least.
What'd you think?
I like it. I mean, there's so much going on here, so much to unpack, really. And let me think here. Where to start? Because you have this great scene with Peter Parker, where Peter Parker recognizes Beverly, but doesn't know where he remembers her from.
Yeah. And Mary Jane's like, was this somebody you've been with before?
Yeah, and it's very awkward. But then he's like, oh wait, I only know her as Spider-Man, because obviously Spider-Man and Peter had met, but in Spider-Man form, or not Spider-Man and Peter, but Howard and Peter had met, but in Spider-Man garb, and so he knows Beverly, but he doesn't know where because he knows her through Howard. And he manages to keep his secret identity secret because this is, before Mary Jane knew. And,
right.
And of course, that keeping of a secret identity, it causes all kinds of problems. There is no doubt about that.
Especially in the 70s for Peter.
Yeah. So I was half expecting when she said, walk 6 blocks east and hang a right. I was half expecting her to drop them in the East River, but no. So
get rid of this chick.
Yeah, but
that would be a classic jealous Mary Jane kind of prank.
Well, it sounds like the kind of thing that you would tell someone in New York. Just give them 1 block more than they needed to. Because it's an island, so
it's happened to me.
I like that. It just happens that they go to the Sanctum Sanctorum, which, when you think about it, if you say 6 blocks and then hang a right, there's probably other houses on that block. So, but they knock on the door, and of course, Nighthawk says, "Yeah, it's definitely for you, Doc, because it's a duck.
It's a duck and a hot girl.
Yeah.
This must be her."
Don't know what the story is, but it's definitely Doctor Strange related. What is interesting to me is how actually powerful for a master of mundane magic Dr. Angst is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's just causing picket fences. It's like, so long as it is, and it's fun because it's like for me.
It's powerful, but as the comic says, it's a mundane. It's like, I think it was a Nighthawk who says, like, what a mundane thing to stop me from going upstairs.
Yeah, but it worked.
A white picket fence.
Yeah. It's like, I don't care who you are. You run into a picket fence with the pointy bits. That's going to hurt,
It sure is.
And it's pretty impressive. And this idea of this person who has mundane powers or he has amazing powers, but that are just focused on mundane objects, it just really comes off to me in kind of like this street shaman kind of a way, like if you were, it's like
it makes sense. That's why his base is above a quote unquote massage
exactly.
parlor.
He seems very modern, and it's like, oh wow, it's like all these villains, all these characters in this, I could absolutely see someone. Well, maybe not the spanker.
Actually, exactly the spanker.
Well, yeah, but I could see some modern writer just bringing these people back and just wanting to do something with, oh man, there was, I mean, really, the guy who's the living black hole, that's an amazing power.
That really is, yeah.
Yeah.
Gerber did bring these characters back when he was writing She-Hulk.
Oh, they did?
Which is, yeah, there's a run where Howard and She-Hulk meet for the first time. They've met many times since in the comic.
Yes.
But it's the first time where they go to what's called the Baloneyverse.
Oh boy!
And Dr. Angst gets broken out of prison because he gets put in prison, and he gathers his troopers again. And it's pretty funny. It's the same four, and it shows what they've been up to since they were busted. And they're all exactly the same, except for the spanker is kind of redesigned as a Punisher joke.
Yeah,
which makes a lot more sense. But this is pre-Punisher. So.
Yeah. But no, it's really amazing. I like this. So here's what I think is the most telling and kind of the most interesting part of Howard's characterization in this is when he's talking to Doctor Strange, and he's like, yeah, can you send me back home? He says, well, what about Beverly? What about, running for president? It's like, man, I'm stuck here. I had to occupy my time. But if you actually could get me home, I just want to go home.
Yeah, he says, Bev's a sweet kid, but and Dr. Strange is like, yeah, I get it. She's not your species.
Yeah,
That won't stop them later in the Howard the Duck magazine, apparently.
Well, what I'm going to say is I think this is him saying what he has said he wanted. But when the opportunity really is there for him, he doesn't really want it. That's sort of, I think, the thing. Because just the idea that he might actually have to say goodbye to Beverly. He doesn't really want to.
Yeah, he's really good at kind of making Howard more sweet than he appears to be,
Yeah.
It's like, I've always said, most people have said that Howard the Duck is Steve Gerber.
Yeah.
And so if you're writing about yourself, you're not going to make yourself a complete crank all the time. Obviously, every person, loves and...
Yeah. Well, I was talking to my son the other day about Howard the Duck, and I think I was talking to Phil the other day about Howard the Duck. I was talking to both of them about Howard. I talk a lot about Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck, he is very much a misanthrope, but he is a misanthrope with a heart of gold.
Yeah.
He really hates people, but he doesn't want to hurt people, and he actually kind of likes people, even though they really get on his nerves,
Yeah. He seems to like to test people. In that same She-Hulk run, him and Wheezy they're hating each other the whole time. He's just they're flying in Jen's flying car or whatever that she got from the Fantastic Four, I believe.
Yeah.
And with the windows up, and they're shooting across America, and Howard makes a deal with her, and he was like, I'll do whatever as long as I can smoke a cigar in your car. And it's just driving Wheezy nuts. And she's like, can I at least crack the window? And he's like, no. And you could just tell he's getting a joy out of pissing her off. It's really funny.
Yeah, that's always an interesting question to me. It's like, does Howard really break the fourth wall? He's definitely a meta character and a meta commentary. But I don't know if he ever actually speaks to the audience the way that modern fourth wall breakers She-Hulk or Deadpool, or my favorite fourth wall breaker, Ambush Bug, does.
Yeah, right. Yep. Ambush Bug feels very Steve Gerber.
Yes. Oh, I love Ambush Bug, and it's actually interesting because for the first time ever, they're letting other people than his creator write Ambush Bug, and it's been very nice. It's been very nice. He's currently in Suicide Squad.
That's how it was with Howard for a long time. A lot of people thought that, and a lot of people still think that, it's not Howard the Duck without Steve Gerber.
Yeah, but that's the thing is,
I don't always agree with that. I enjoy Howard stories beyond Steve Gerber myself, but
that's the thing. It's comic books it's not a thing you own. It's a thing you create, and then your stories are your stories, and then the next person gets to tell their stories, and that's what makes it fun. That's what mythos is, and a mercurial characters like Howard the Duck, they really should be allowed to live that full life.
Yeah, I really like getting back to the book itself. I really like just these villains. I think I'm glad he brought them back at a later date, but they're so ridiculous. Like, just to go through a couple of them, kind of what they're Sitting Bullseye claims that he's like an ex-CIA officer and infiltrated the American Indian movement to stop them from. Of course, yeah. I mean, they started here in Minneapolis.
Yeah,
I've got a whole personal history with that kind of organization. How great they were for Native rights, but it's so funny that it seems almost like it's going to be a racist sort of take on that, but the fact that they absolutely humiliate Sitting Bullseye and tattoo a bullseye on his chest, and then Tilly the Hun is hilarious to me because when in her fight with the Hulk, she's basically like, "If you beat me, I'll be your bride," and Hulk's like, "I don't want you as my bride."
Exactly. That was not. Yeah, that was. And this is a very. This is your classic childlike Hulk. This is the Hulk.
Well, that's how Gerber. Someone I just read or said the other day. I heard somebody talk about in the MCU the most sort of Gerbian thing they've gotten so far was Hulk's portrayal in the third Thor movie. I guess.
Yeah.
There's the childlike dumb Hulk who's kind of funny.
Yeah, which is a good Hulk. It's actually a really nice Hulk. It's actually in many ways maybe even one of my favorite Hulks. And
same.
Just the idea of the Hulk being a few words and saying what he actually feels and just having his existence on the surface, which was an interesting take they did with again back to She-Hulk, and when they did the very superpowered She-Hulk recently in the Avengers comics, and the idea that that simple speech, that the complex speech is actually the shield, and when she's being a lawyer, it's about all these complex layers of words, but really what she that simple speech pattern, that's really the truth of the character.
Yeah, that's just like our our ape brains kind of coming through.
Yeah,
or whatever.
And it's nice, but this is definitely the kind of Hulk that you would eat a fruit pie with. So I like that.
Yeah, and some of the other, I think like we talked before, the Spanker. Would have been the Punisher if the Punisher had been created yet, but I like the fact that he was a former head of a prep school.
Yes, and then they didn't let him spank the little boys anymore.
He is too back, and then the black hole just sucks, which I think was a funny joke. And the way Beverly defeats him is really funny later in the comic when they're all fighting. She shoves his arm into his own self.
That's how you defeat someone with a black hole in your chest, is you have him suck himself into himself.
Yeah, and then like how you were saying, Dr. Angst, as much of a sort of mustache twirling, generic comic book villain as he is, he's really quite powerful in his mundaneness. It shows you how powerful the mundane can actually be.
Well, exactly, and I think that's very much Gerber often deals with is the mundane made fanciful.
Yeah, that was kind of almost his battle cry for Howard the Duck. It's like it's the joke is that it's not a joke.
Yeah, it's
even though it's definitely a joke.
It's a joke, but one of my favorite lines, and again, not a Gerber line from Howard the Duck, is when he meets Gwenpool and he's like, "It's real to me." And I always love when these characters who are very meta in their self, and when they're faced with their meta-ness, have to say, I don't care if it's not real to you, it's real to me. And all these things, they happen to me, and I have these emotions towards it. I'm as real as I need to be, and in this moment, all these things impact me. Do not dismiss me as just a comic book character. And in this story, it does wind up. But like I said, I think the fact that Howard chooses not to go home, and you can say, because he didn't want to have to explain to Beverly in the moment, he didn't want it all to blow up. But the fact of the matter is, it was going to blow up when he went home regardless. So he just was going to not say goodbye to Beverly. I mean, no. What it was is he decided that after all this, yes, he could go home, and he still has to have that as his motivation in his idea that he just wants to go home. But really, he doesn't want to go home. Beverly's not the same species, but you know what? That's very speciesist of him. And this is a planet.
Well, and he said, as Howard had said in an issue or two before this, she's ugly, but I love her.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, her bill is very small, but
Exactly. Yeah, but there are, speaking of the jokes, there are some really great jokes. Like when they're heading off to, Beverly says, like, we're going to head off to find these stewardesses that she knew from high school. And they're on the subway. And he was like, yeah, right, if we get there alive. There's some funny New York City jokes. And then the next page, when they get to Greenwich Village, the first thing that Beverly says is, what a weird place. Everybody looks like Al Pacino. And if anyone who's ever been to New York knows that that's not true. But it could have been in 1976.
Yeah, here's what I'll tell you, and this is the thing about New York City. It is a very different city. Like, the idea that they're going to the Village and, they know some stewardesses that have a house down in the Village. It's like, no, you don't. Not now, you don't. But then, yes, you absolutely did. Like, back then, you could buy a building for $1.50. It was great.
For whatever a sorcerer could make. Well, it's probably why they, the Marvel creators in the first place didn't feel like they needed to create a metropolis or something. It's like, we've got New York City. We're right. Stick your, like they always said, the world outside your window. And for the 60s and 70s of New York City, it was not a safe place at all.
And that's the beauty of it,
I think it's really funny that when they get to the Sanctum Sanctorum, speaking of the East Village, Beverly is like, hey, man, I know you've seen you in the papers. You're the Falcon. She says that to Nighthawk. Well, I thought it's really funny, but I'm a little surprised that she didn't say, aren't you the Batman?
Well, we don't acknowledge that guy here. And Batman is fictional. We know that Batman's fictional in this universe,
Right. But wasn't Nighthawk actually created to be the Batman?
Yeah, he is the Batman. He is the Squadron Sinister Batman, and for when they did the crossover, the first crossover with the Squadron Sinister, and then was the Squadron Supreme Batman, but then they actually decided to have a Nighthawk in the actual Marvel Universe.
I also really like when Howard is really asking Doctor Strange to send him back. This is just a couple of little funny art notes I had. When he opens, he's like, behold, the orb of Agamotto. And the next page before the tennis balls come shooting, it looks like it's wrapped in a condom or something, which I don't know if that's a Steve Gerber joke or if that's a Sal Buscema joke.
I did not catch that. I'll be honest with
it's
you.
very phallic looking. It's pretty funny.
I'm reading it in a very digital form, so maybe in the paper it would have looked bigger. But
I'm reading it in what we call the Thickie, which is the complete collection, Howard the Duck Volume 1.
But no, I did not catch that. But actually, I like that. This is not the first time we've seen. Well, this might be the first time we've seen the Orb of Agamotto, but I know it's not the last time. So the Orb of Agamotto has come up again, time and time again. First time I see it being used for the dimensional travel. So
right. Yeah.
That's interesting. What I actually really like in this is I don't know if this is the first time we see the Cloak of Levitation used offensively.
Yeah, I don't either. I love Doctor Strange, but I haven't read all. I'll have to ask Russ. He's been reading every Doctor Strange.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if because this is the thing. I don't know how often. I don't think I've actually seen that happen in Doctor Strange either. And
I've seen it. Well, in the movies they've been doing it.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Cool.
It's this thing in the movies, and it makes me wonder. Hey, is this the first time that we see the Cloak of Levitation being used like that, where the cloak is having this activity and this use and this autonomy? If so, that's pretty interesting.
There's so many little things in the big fight at Shea Stadium, which I think it's funny that he said it in Shea Stadium instead. It's like, where are we going to have plenty of room to fight? But Hulk is like, I can't smash girl.
Yes.
And that's until he's
which takes a whole other meaning in our modern parlance. So
yes, it really does. But Tilly's like, I warn you, beast, fall or be my mate. And Hulk just screams out, no!
Yes. Oh,
not this woman.
I like Tilly the Hun. I felt that she got a little short shrift in this.
She was actually my favorite, I think, of the villain. I mean, she's kind of like it's funny to have her in here versus Valkyrie because she's kind of like a corn-fed version of Valkyrie.
Yeah, and she doesn't really fight Valkyrie in it. So it's like,
No,
she's fighting.
Yeah,
and there's a weird thing where it says like, I forget. Oh, Sitting Bullseye. It says I vibrated her sword out of her hand. I don't even know when he got that power. What does that mean?
I have no idea. There's a couple things like that I don't. There's one panel where there's just a big box of shredded wheat.
Yes,
and it
because
says it's cardboard. We're all boxed in. I'm like, huh?
Yes, because that's the mundane power. So he makes the entire Sanctum Sanctorum be surrounded by a box of shredded wheat.
Gotcha.
It's the power of the mundane. And again, an insanely amazing power. But it has to use the focus of something mundane.
Mm-hmm.
He can't he can't. And it's and in a way, it's actually even more magical. It's magical realism, as they say.
I do really like the way the whole thing kind of, like, Howard is the hero once again. Mm-hmm. It's great. In his first appearance, he was basically like, I want to be a hero. Really? And he kind of falls his way into sort of being the hero. He wants to impress the Cleveland police. It seems like Howard gets to be the hero and he's the almost reluctant hero and everything, and decides once again to stay. But I think my favorite part about it, when they're wrapping the whole thing up, besides the cops coming out of the Black Hole's chest to arrest them, because he had sucked them in earlier with his fight, is Howard basically, he's just like, hey man, can you loan us $1 so we can get back uptown?
Although I want to know, where's he going uptown? Like,
I don't. Well, he's probably going back to the campaign party headquarters, the hotel.
Yeah, hoping that the all-night party people are back there, and
the all-night party people. But that's about probably wraps us up so overall. Once again, give us your last impressions.
I love this book. It's a really fun book. Like I said, it gives you a lot of depth on the characters in a very short amount of space. We introduce some very interesting villains. I really felt, to some extent, the villains got a little bit of a story, and I love the fact that they said that Prometheum is actually a mystical placebo that doesn't give you anything you don't already have. Although arguably unlocking your potential, that is something you don't necessarily have. It just,
Well, a placebo can be a good thing for the power of positive thinking.
Yes, they clearly had something,
Yeah,
but also, and that's actually one of those things where I feel like, wow, if they had it in them all along, maybe if these characters did focus more, like Tilly the Hun, I would love to see her really become an almost Conan the Barbarian kind of, I know I have this in me to be this ultimate, warrior kind of character.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you completely. I think it's really great. It's a little bit of a side. This one's, like I said, it's between the two sort of main presidential Howard run for president thing, but I think he slipped a little bit of that in. But it's a return to sort of the more goofiness and like the way Steve Gerber Defenders kind of read. Not quite as goofy as this, but they were still pretty weird and kind of funny for having such serious characters on that team that he was writing. But I agree with you. It's Howard the Duck. What's there not to like?
Exactly. It's another great book, which is easy to have.
All right. Well, Charlie, give us the plugs. Tell us where people can find you.
Well, you guys can always
what to look for and all that stuff.
Write to me in that old-fashioned email way that where our mothers and fathers once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. You can always follow me on Twitter. I live tweet things on occasion when I feel like it, and that's at Charle Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality.
Perfect. And then we could also catch you on the Capes and Lunatics, everything.
Of course. Certainly find me on Capes and Lunatics. I can give you all the Capes and Lunatics information if you need. But
ramble it out at top New Jersey speed.
Yes. Okay. Well, then we'll just leave that. But yes, absolutely go to the Capes and Lunatics podcast, Full Stream Ahead podcast, as well as Super Connectivity podcast, are all podcasts I do where you can listen to me and my friends talk about crazy things. And, as I always say, go to linktr.ee/Capes and Lunatics, and you can link to all of our merch and websites and things of that nature.
Great.
There we go.
Well, thanks for coming on. I hope to have you back again soon.
Please do.
If there's an issue that you're coming up in the future and wanted to, I want to talk with those 2 idiots about this Howard the Duck comic.
Yes.
Make sure to let us know.
I will let you know. And likewise, if something says, I would love to see Charlie's take on this, feel free to ask me back.
Great. Thank you. Well, we'll be right back to discuss Howard the Duck Volume 1, Number 8, Open Season. See you soon. Welcome back. Thanks, Charlie, for coming on and discussing the Defenders and the Duck, man.
The Professor.
The Professor and the Duck, man. Well, now we're going to get into Howard the Duck, Volume 1, Number 8, titled Open Season. And this is where we really get into Howard starting to get into the politics, and it's spoilers. I love it. The release date was October 26, 1976. The cover date, when it was pulped and never to be read by anyone else ever again, was January 77. Cover art, Gene Colan, writer, Steve Gerber, and the Marvel Wiki quotes, or says that Mary Screenis also helped out with the writing. Penciler, of course, Gene Colan. Inker, Steve Loyola again. Colorist, Janice Cohen. Letterer, Irving Watanabe. And the editor, once again, was the great, fabulous, everyone's favorite editor at Marvel, apparently, R.G. Goodwin.
Leaving Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, Howard and Beverly soon find themselves the target of every hired assassin representing interest groups that seek to kill Howard and ruin the all-night party's bid for presidency. We meet two of the assassins who turn on each other but decide it's not worth the money after the botched attempts. Howard and Beverly are rescued by country western star Dreyfus Gulch.
He's back.
Who drives them to the all-night party campaign headquarters as every assassin in the 5 boroughs comes out of nowhere, shooting at Gulch's bulletproof Rolls Royce. At the all-night party campaign headquarters, Howard becomes privy to the advertising campaign that is being initiated by G.Q. Studley, who wants to reinvent Howard's image and comes up with the best PR possible. While they are giving Howard a more friendly look, Studley explains to Beverly that Howard is popular enough to warrant the most targeted candidate for assassination above Gerald Ford or Jimmy Carter. However, when Howard rejects his new look, he fires the PR campaign after biting Studley on the nose with the false Kennedy teeth they dressed him in, also throwing in a few good insults. Howard hires a new campaign manager the scientific way, at random out of the phone book. Mad Genius Associates. Afterward, Howard makes a number of media-worthy stories, dumping unrecyclable junk at the doorstep of the corporation that made them, having parents ride the bus to school with their children, and unveiling his strategy for allowing the military to buy new, more powerful weapons by having the soldiers live in caves. After a flurry of attention from the major party candidates, as well as media attention, the polls show that 48% of the population wants Howard dead, 30% will vote for him, and 22% are still undecided. As Beverly spends a night alone in Central Park wondering what she's getting herself into, she is startled by a young man who says he's in the park to feed the ducks. After Beverly leaves, he strangles a duck to death. Later, being visited by various mealy-mouthed lobbyists at Dreyfus Gulch's estate, Howard turns away their gifts for allowing their interests to influence the government should Howard be voted in. Back in New York at the Hotel Rycrisp, Howard addresses journalists at a nationally televised press conference.
Ladies and germs, I'll keep my opening smart remarks brief. I didn't particularly want to be president of this coast-to-coast funny farm you hairless apes have set up. When they asked me to run, I'd just been hit on the head and didn't really understand what I was agreeing to. But I've reached the conclusion that most of the American public is in the same condition most of the time. So maybe, just maybe, I'm the ideal candidate. You meat brains willingly subject yourselves to more abuse, physical and psychological, than any nation in history. You allow your eyes and lungs to be eaten away by pollution. You fill your digestive tracts with chemicals. Your ears are barraged by the sounds of jackhammer progress. All the while politicians and Madison Avenue bang away at your minds. You all want to be happy and secure, yet you open yourselves to the constant tension and pressure of a society that claims to be free, but refuses to let you make a move without first filing forms in triplicate. You wonder why you got violence? While you're young or either dissident, empty-headed, or drugged into a stupor? It's because you've fashioned an emotionally and intellectually sterile culture. That's why. If an individual is unwilling to spend his life in the plodding pursuit of possessions, there's nothing for him to do. The United States is one big dateless Saturday night. If I'm elected, I'm going to inject a little life back into you, anesthetized Americans. For 4 years, this country is going to get down and boogie, see? Ungawa, okay? Now, anybody got any brilliant questions?
Ramsey Klepp, Devil's Tongue, New Mexico Daily Lick. Mr. Duck, which do you favor? Conditional amnesty or a blanket pardon for Vietnam draft evaders?
Neither. I favor education.
Beg pardon?
Look, as nearly as I can tell, everybody is still reacting on this question with his gut, not his head. It's still my country, right or wrong, versus make love, not war. I figure the answer is a debate on television between proponents of each position. The government would buy time on all 3 networks, and the yelling could go on for days. Then the country could decide in a national referendum based on each individual's judgment of the facts. Revolutionary, huh? Next.
Dustin Kobrox from the Lima, Ohio Daily Bean. What's your opinion on the recent Washington scandals? Should elected officials be held accountable for their private morality?
Nah, as long as the taxpayers aren't financing their little romps, senators and congressmen deserve to have a little fun. Heck, we ought to be heartened to know some of those old prunes have still got it in them.
Sam Quinton from dubious New Jersey's Daily The Know. How do you feel, sir, about violence in movies, television programs, and comic books?
I'm all for it.
What?
As long as it's never presented as cathartic, as a release, as a solution. The kid ought to know what he's getting into if he's contemplating stabbing or shooting somebody. It's messy. The blood gets all over the floor. It smells bad. It's ugly to look at. I think violence should be presented honestly, as disgustingly and offensively as possible. There's no such thing as tasteful violence.
Beverly Switzler leaps up on the table, does a little dance, blows the whistle, and chirps, "That's all, folks," into the microphone. The auditorium explodes in applause, and the press conference concludes. After the conference, Howard is attacked by assassins, back in the consumer, automobile, and oil industries, narrowly escaping death each time. Returning to the hotel, Dreyfus shows them that the front page headline, which features a doctored photo of Howard and Beverly in the bath together. Next, the bite of the beaver.
A doctored photo. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We all know. A little wet scroopiness. Anyway, what did you think of number 8?
Oh, I loved it. And we get our first great gag on the cover. Carter yells foul. But I just love, I pretty much love everything about this issue.
Yeah. From
the assassins just kind of falling over themselves trying to kill Howard, the bulletproof Rolls Royce. I think my favorite thing is putting those stupid teeth in Howard's mouth.
The way they dress him. When I was reading this the other day, and he first comes out, and he's all like, it looks like they drugged him or something. His eyes are all like going crazy. He's got these just Kennedy-ass buck teeth. It's like, too soon, dude. Too soon.
Yeah.
Both of these boys just died within 10 years of this comic game coming out, pretty much. Yeah. It's also, I guess, a little bit Jimmy Carter to have big old buck teeth like that. To me, it just came off very Kennedy. That's some of the first parody that's super funny, or satire, I guess.
And then just at the end, just one big assassination attempt after the other. The baby doll explodes, the steel girder coming down, and then the car just driving at them. And Howard is just, wow!
Escaping every time.
Yeah. It's
the luck of the duck.
It's a chaotic issue, and I love it. And we start to get the feeling that maybe the people of America are more interested in Beverly than they are Howard. But
yeah, I like the way it's broke down in chapters. It's like what are they? Like a campaign log, like the campaign log September, when it's all the media attention that Howard's getting, and they just draw Ford and Jimmy Carter in there with Howard, and it's like Walter Cronkite.
Yeah,
it's just straight up Walter Cronkite, and he even says, and now it says QBS Evening News, so I guess they didn't want to be sued for that part. But then it says Walter. No, except for he says Walter Klondike.
Yeah.
So they're still avoiding getting sued there, but it's just all of their likenesses. And Gene Colan is such a fucking good illustrator. Mm-hmm. The way this whole thing's laid out, it's almost like a precursor to The Dark Knight. You know what I'm talking about? Like all the media panels, even, here there's like mostly 6 per page, but with The Dark Knight, there'll be like 24 or whatever in that Batman comic. Yeah. But the way they're doing the media blitz and all that stuff, it's like that stuff with the talking head TV grab was already happening.
McFarlane would steal that too in Spawn and Spider-Man. He would do that talking head media bit, a whole page of it.
So. Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I never read the McFarlane. I didn't get that far.
Yeah.
I was done with comics by the time McFarlane took over Spider-Man, pretty much. So I think I was still reading maybe some JMD Mateus and Spectacular at that point. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not exactly sure how the timeline works out, but yeah. Well, who wouldn't want to reference them? I mean, I'm sure this has been done in other ways too, but just the way.
Yeah.
Oh God, my God! There's that panel. Walter Klondike talking with just Howard over his shoulder with the cigar. And it's like, huh? And some of the quotes from the politicians are really great. So I am here reading from the floppy, as you are reading from the thickie, I'm sure.
The thickie. Mm-hmm. Patent pending. Why a duck, you ask? I say, why not a duck? You've had turkeys running the country for 200 years.
My favorite part of the entire comic, though, is the press conference. And he hasn't really done this with Howard since Man-Thing, right? Since the backup and Man-Thing, where it's a whole dump of text on a page, and it's just the only illustration on the page is Howard at a press conference table speaking into the microphones, and then there's press all around, and then we just get a ton of text about Howard going off about how stupid we are in America and why not run for president. Yeah. It is so good. It's a perfect way to I've got a lot of words to say, and we're not going to put a speech balloon by every single mouth. So why not just dump? And this is a little bit showing some of Gerber's genius that he'll pull off later in issue 16, where the entire issue is nothing but text with pictures that don't do or don't kind of go with it. But his platform, it really reminds me. Do you know who the punk rock band Dead Kennedys are? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, Jello Biafra, one of the founders and the original singer for Dead Kennedys, had ran for mayor of San Francisco in, I think it was 79. And he was running against, the current senator from California, Dianne Feinstein. And he had just come up with a really hilarious kind of platform. The same way Howard's kind of why not do this? It will work. Some of the things that he said should happen for mayor was forcing businessmen to wear clown suits within city limits. He said they should open up all vacant properties for squatting because, why not? They're vacant. So if people are homeless, let them have a home. He pulled a bunch of campaign pranks. Dianne Feinstein had done one where she went downtown and swept up, saying she was going to clean up the city. And so he went to her house and vacuumed leaves off her lawn.
Wow.
Yep. And his campaign slogan was, "There's always room for Jello." That was his and after all the pranks he pulled, there was one great picture of there somewhere of one of his friends. They had a rally at City Hall, and one of his friends was carrying a sign that said, "If he doesn't win, I'll kill myself."
Wow.
And so, it was basically a publicity stunt kind of for Dead Kennedys, but also just to like make fun of the whole process. But he actually went on to have some of his ideas that other politicians had sort of picked up. Like one of the main ones was police should have to run for office in the communities that they police, which kind of makes sense. It's like the way a sheriff is voted in. Like you could have to have these cops running for a really important and dangerous job have to get to know the community that they will be policing. And so some of these, I mean, you know, dressing businessmen up as clowns is great, but and banning cars from downtown, which he said too, actually would have really helped pollution in San Francisco. But Gerber's almost like got the same sort of vibe is what it gave me. That when I read this, I was like, this really feels like the Jello Biafra candidacy, or the Yippies back in the 60s, which kind of were like sort of, or the Merry Pranksters, or these political pranksters who would just pull jokes. One of the big things the Yippies did to protest the Vietnam War was all gather around the Pentagon, and they said they were going to use magic to lift it up in the air to levitate the Pentagon. And of course, they didn't really believe this, but enough authorities were worried about all of these weirdos surrounding the Pentagon and doing black magic that they like went and arrested them.
Wow.
So, you know, it carried on from the 60s into the 70s, and then from the 70s into weird Steve Gerber comic books.
The Gerberness is felt.
Yes, indeed. Oh, speaking of, it's his last episode will be out in early March, but just a couple weeks ago, it was the anniversary of his death, the 14-year anniversary of his death. So, rest in peace, Stevie.
And he was writing for DC when he passed. He was writing a Dr. Fate Countdown to Mystery or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I was just talking with a friend the other day about, he was trying to get me to watch, well, I don't know if he's trying to get me to watch it, but he was talking about how great the new James Gunn DC series, which I'm paid so close
Peacemaker?
Peacemaker. I was like, I can't even remember what it's fucking called. I was like, I'm never going to watch it, probably, because first of all, I don't want to pay for HBO Max. And second of all, I just don't care about DC characters. And he said, but he's giving him, he said the series is actually, there's a lot of pathos to the character and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, but James Gunn had to intersect that into the character. The character was nothing in the comics. It was pretty much a blank slate. And from my eyes, a lot of DC characters don't have character, you know?
Well, technically, he's not a DC character.
Okay, technically, technically he is.
He's a Charlton.
He was bought by DC.
But yeah,
he was bought by DC, but it was along the same lines where a lot of the DC characters just don't have the pathos that Marvel characters did. And it was DC that stole away a lot of the Marvel writers in the late 70s and early 80s to like give their characters some character. And then all of a sudden, you know, Batman actually has a little bit of character. Superman has a lot of character. From what I know, and like I don't know shit about DC, but from what I've been able to tell, it seems like Green Lantern and Green Arrow were some of the first characters to actually kind of get some pathos to them in the 70s with, who was, you know, Neil Adams and
Denny O'Neil.
Denny O'Neil, Marvel writer.
His best work was DC stuff, though, in my opinion. Yeah, because he did The Question, and that's one of the greatest comics of all time. Plus, he's the one that took Batman from being 60s cheesy Batman into being more serious in the 70s. So, thank God for that.
In my mind, Batman could just be the same character, and I wouldn't really care. Yeah. I know I referenced a little Frank Miller Batman earlier, but I don't know. It's. I think Frank Miller's no idiot. He could see that the character was like the most character that this character has is that he's a fascist and a rich guy, rich guy who beats up poor people. So we'll just lean into that because I guess technically that is a character trait. But Howard's got a lot of character right off the bat.
Yeah, he beats up poor, rich, well, you name it.
He thinks
he'll bite your leg off, he'll bite your nose,
and call you an asshole.
Yeah,
he just thinks all hairless apes are assholes.
I'm interested to see where we go with this duck murderer that was introduced in this episode or this issue.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes. That is actually I did want to talk about that quick little interlude. Yeah, just a one-page kind of, they even calls it an interlude, a chill October morn in Central Park. That guy seems real scary.
Yeah.
This is going back to some horror comic kind of stuff until he grabs a duck and strangles it, and the duck still goes, wah!
Poor duck.
And then he says, like, Beverly's like, well, have fun with the ducks. And he's like, I will. And she walks away. I make it a point to throttle one every day. An assassin who already has it out for ducks is really going to go after Howard. The whole President arc is just one of the greatest in legend. It's one of the greatest Howard the Duck things, and it's made its way past just being a Howard the Duck comic with a lot of people. It's just a great comic run. It's funny gag that Steve Gerber pulled off that actually got into pop culture. They actually got people to send Steve Gerber money, actual real cash for Howard the Duck's run for president.
Wow.
And a duck can't run for president from another dimension. A duck from America could run for president if it was born here.
Yeah.
But you weren't born here, pal. Which I think that's like a little funny thing that in the Constitution that Steve Gerber glossed over.
Yeah.
So far.
It does remind me, I mean, this was obviously not the presidency, but there is that town where the dog is a mayor. Are you familiar with that?
I am. But that dog, born in the good old USA.
Yep. Yeah.
You can't even, you can't be born in Duck World or Kenya to be an American president.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that, unless you got anything else to say about it, I'll just say that the art, I'm a broken record, the art's even better. The pacing, I feel like, is, even though it's so chaotic, it moves even smoother than the last issue.
Yep. It's really, the art is just continues to impress me, and Howard is so cute. And I can't, the only thing I have to say is I can't wait to see Howard fight the beaver.
Corkscrew penis versus the beaver.
Yeah. And I when at the end of the issue, they have that title over the picture of them in the hot tub, and I'm like, wait a second. What are they trying to say here? But then
Scandal plucks duck. Next, but then the bite of the beaver.
But then you...
and the look on Beverly's face.
Yeah. You turn and see the next comic, and it's literally like a giant monstrous beaver.
Yeah. So. See, in the floppy, I don't get that.
Yeah.
That little hint, even though I know what's coming next. But yeah, it's just so funny. Posters say he's finished.
I will say the digital versions, because I read them digitally, even though I have the thickie. I basically use the thickie to go through it for the show.
Right.
But they have the letters pages in the back in the digital version, but not in the thickie.
Yeah, they don't, and there's no letters page actually in this issue for some reason. Maybe because they just wanted to. It's a 31-page comic, including ads for the floppy. So he wanted to. Oh, actually, there's the letters page. Never mind. Wise Quacks is right in the middle of the book for some reason.
Oh,
now one of these days we should go through and maybe just, if we have got a fill-in episode to do or whatever, we should just go back and see some of the best letters from Howard the Duck comics, because I have not been reading any of them, and I really should be.
Yeah.
Just to get a 1970s 12-year-old's perspective on Howard the Duck.
There's some weirdos that wrote into Marvel Comics in the 70s. So
one of them was Steve Gerber in the 60s.
Yeah.
He wrote into Stan Lee and Jack Kirby talking about how, issue 13 was a masterpiece, but 14 and 15 sucked. Pretty much. And he was like, you guys are so good, but these villains are terrible, and you should do this and that. And this is coming from like probably a preteen Steve Gerber writing into that, and they published the issues, and basically Stan was like, this kid's got a lot to say.
Yeah. There was a lot of people writing in that were saying that they were werewolves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anybody writing into Howard saying they are ducks.
Yeah. I hope and pray that there are.
This is so unrealistic. I would never run for president. To be with a redhead? Come on, everybody knows all ducks like blondes. Not all ducks are as cranky as you make them out to be. Speaking as a mallard, I'd have to say, I've been with the same woman for 5 years, and I will be with her for the rest of my life, because that's what ducks apparently do.
I'm very offended by your representation of geese.
In issue 8, the bellhop supposedly strangled a duck, but it looks a little bit more like a goose to me.
Honk.
Gene Colan needs to go back to art school to learn.
Apparently he didn't know the difference between a duck and a goose either.
Well, with that said, I'd say that's enough said.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody, for listening, and especially thank you to my friend Russell for hanging out and looking at some stupid-ass comics with me.
It's always a pleasure, Noel.
All righty. Well, we'll see everybody in a couple weeks. Hang on to your tail feathers.
Quack!
Bye-bye. Please join us on Patreon on patreon.com/trappedinaworld. We'd love to hear your feedback about future issues of Howard the Duck. Send us a voicemail or write us an email at howardpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is Howard Duck Pod. Our Instagram is Howard Duck Pod. Join us on Facebook at Trapped in a World, the Howard the Duck Podcast. And our website is trappedinaworld.libsyn.com.